and they would maybe be partnered or married in Second Life, and then they find out that the person has a real life spouse and maybe nothing is ever going to come of this. How do they deal with it? Now, those are things that I think if you took to the average real life psychotherapist, they might see right away, wait, you said Second Life? Okay, there's your first symptom. Where I didn't see Second Life as a symptom. I saw it and still see it as an amazing environment. Second Life is not a pathology. This is Dr. Tammy Fletcher, aka Avalon Burke, and you're listening to the Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley. It's better than therapy.
Hello there and welcome to the Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley. My name is Draxter Dupre. We're here in our attic studio in Second Life's 1920s Berlin with the one and only Joe Yardley. Hi, Joe.
Hello.
The station ID is by Tammy Fletcher, Dr. Tammy Fletcher, licensed family marriage therapist out of San Diego. And she will fill us in today about therapy in virtual worlds and physical worlds, for that matter. What is the difference? What are the challenges of each? She started in Second Life in 2006 and set up an island for healing and learning, the Wellness Island. It's now unfortunately defunct, but we're going to take a trip into the past. We also have Jessica Dwagalski, formerly Jessica Linden, on today to reminisce about her time working alongside Joe Miller, former VP of Platform and Engineering at Linden Lab. He passed away last week, a hugely influential man at the lab in those turbulent days, and also very beloved by his colleagues as well as residents. So much more on the show in a few minutes, but first a couple housekeeping notes. You can get in touch with us anytime via the show's avatar Drax Files. On Skype, you can leave us a voicemail under Drax Files as well. Email radio@draxfiles.com. You can support the show by becoming a sponsor or visiting the sponsors with the banners on the right. You can also take out a voluntary subscription of $100 Linden per month. That is $25 Linden per show. Ping us in World and we'll let you know how to do this. Subscribe, please, to the show on Stitcher or iTunes. So, Joe, let's move right on with Joe Miller passed away. Have you ever met Joe Miller, a.k.a. Joe Linden, in World?
No, not that I can remember.
According to Jessica Dwagalski, who's going to speak in a minute, he was also a big believer of the very concept of Second Life. Jessica was the former director of community between 2004 and 2010. And here she is setting the scene for us circa 2006 when Joe came on board. A turbulent time at the lab indeed.
Yeah, it was insane how fast it was growing. And you look back on it, and the fact that the grid stayed up at all is actually quite amazing, as we were adding hundreds of thousands of people every 6 weeks or so. I mean, it was insane how fast we were growing. And he was brought on to make Second Life more stable and more reliable. And, those of us who were around back then remember when we would take the grid down to update. Yeah, and I would post the blog post like, hey, everybody, grid's down, you're getting kicked out, and then hours would go by and sometimes those hours would stretch and would start to have panic attacks because everybody's trying to get back in World. And part of his job was to help make that process and was to make that process more reliable and more, just better, and to keep us from falling over. So helping with scaling, helping with stability was sort of what he was brought in for, just testing and making all of that more robust and, trying to take us to that next level as we were scaling. But the project that I think who ever worked with Joe at Linden remembers the most, I think, is voice, because that was something when he got to Linden, he was like, this is something I really want to have happen. We didn't have the resources. We were growing so fast. It was all about scaling at that point. We didn't do a lot of feature development. So he actually worked with outside companies to develop the technology, and then we incorporated it in sort of alongside, there was its own voice viewer and all of that. It was a very controversial feature, and I worked a lot with the community on, that was part of my role. I worked with Joe on that project, and that was how I really got to know him. And that project was so innovative and so interesting. I'll never forget, it's one of my favorite Joe memories, actually, is the first time I heard voice in Second Life. In a spatial way, not just, someone playing a stream or something. And anyone who knew Joe knew that he had this big booming voice, or what I call his 1940s radio voice. And we're in the office, and it was one of those late where I've got 100 things to do, and I'm just, work. And at some point, I look up and there's like 3 people left in the office. It's me and Joe and, maybe a couple other people. And for some reason I got onto the test build. I was like, well, I'll go check out and see what's going on in this test build that Joe's been working on. And I hear behind me Joe's like big booming voice, his avatar behind me. And I literally at my desk in the office turned around because he had to have been behind me. Like it was just so realistic and so different from the Second Life experience I'd had till that point, which was all type, and immediately understood how powerful that could be. As far as immersion goes, I literally thought he was standing behind me in the room. Everyone talks about, Joe really worked on that project. Without Joe, that project would not have existed. He really took the reins in a way that a good leader can to push forward this new technology.
I'm wondering if he himself kind of realized the significance of adding voice, or if that was something that you guys had talked about at the time, we got to get voice in there, or was he saying, guys, we got to focus on this because this is going to be very important for a world. If we claim it's immersive, we have to have voice.
One of the things I remember, and I don't know when it happened in the timeline, if they were already thinking about this as a project or not, but I remember when Joe got there that he's like, we have to have voice. Like it always, in our maps, it was always there somewhere, on a list with the 40,000 other things to do. And I think Joe was just so focused on that, the immersion that would provide, the depth of communication. Second Life, for anyone who spent a good amount of time there, it's, the technology is really interesting, but it's all about the people. Typing can only get you so far.
So he had a lot on his plate during these days of rapid growth as an effective leader. Tell me a little bit about that. How was he with dealing with others? As we all know, when the shit hits the fan, privately or in a work relationship, some people start yelling and others kind of remain calm, captains of the ship. So how was he in that regard?
So Joe was never my boss, but I was lucky enough to have him as a mentor for several years. And, we would meet every couple of weeks and talk through challenges I was having as I took on more responsibility and more leadership. There was no BS, it was very clear what he was asking you to do. He was very encouraging of people, which I as his mentee, really appreciated. Although I found that as times would get, there were various challenges that would happen throughout the lab's history. We would talk each other off ledges, which I think is a sign of a true mentorship, and that you're both kind of helping each other through. So I think someone who had that much more seniority and, that much more experience in both life and, in the workforce, being able to approach a mentorship in that way, I think that speaks a lot to his character.
So the relationship between Lindens and residents, if you could comment on that, because Joe is also remembered by residents. I see it on my profile feed. A lot of people interacted with him. I never did, but he was someone who was well respected within the residents. So please talk a little bit about that time.
The thing to remember about Joe is he was a real fan of Second Life. He loved it. He saw its potential. He understood why it was a hard problem to solve, and he understood that the community was key. So he worked very hard to include them. And, unlike, I don't want to trash talk other executives, but, as we got bigger and bigger and we started to become more of a company, we brought in executives who maybe didn't have that passion and that love for Second Life. He did. He loved it. He spent time there. He was approachable. He would talk to people, talk to the residents in world. And I think that leads to both heated conversations where people, have something that they want done and isn't possible. And it leads to just interesting hangout times, and his giant robot avatar would definitely show up at events.
Did you guys stay in touch when he left?
Yeah, he still lived in the Bay Area. He still worked. He still worked in the Bay Area, and we definitely kept in touch. And I went from this sort of mentor, collaborator, co-collaborator, colleague role to definitely one of a friend. He was at Brad and I's wedding. We still would meet for wine or just conversation to catch up.
What will he be remembered for in connection with Second Life?
I mean, I think, his work both with voice and with the development community and with the third-party viewers and all of this stuff that he did, and overall his curiosity and just passion for the technology and for the community is something I will always remember about Joe.
Now, that was Jessica Dwogalski. I hope I pronounced her name correctly, by the way. We're linking to a remembrance of Joe Miller on the official Linden blog, and also his family put up a nice website where you can type a few words if you knew him.
Yeah, we'll put a link on the website, of course.
It's really interesting when someone passes away. It happened to me in Second Life with friends that I have had a great relationship in world, but have never met in the real world. There you really kind of, I think, feel the power of a virtual world.
Yeah, it is, and sometimes these people vanish, and you don't know what happened to them, and that is really upsetting. These piles of pixels somehow become real.
They are real. They represent real people. They're our digital extensions.
Yeah, try and tell Facebook that.
While we're moving on exactly to that point, there's a famous drag queen. Her name is Sister Roma, and she's fighting the real name policy of Facebook, something that I could go on and on about. My main reason why I really don't entrust Facebook with the future of the metaverse if they kind of keep this model.
Well, of course, the main issue is that Facebook wants us to use our real identities on Facebook, on profiles. When people don't, for one reason or another, they try and stop it, and they try and force you to share your real identity, which is an annoying problem for those of us who use Facebook with our Second Life avatars. It's an even bigger problem for people who do this. For instance, if you're a drag queen or some sort of performer or whatever who has a stage name, but also people who have been bullied or who are hiding, for instance, for an ex-spouse who's been violent or abusive.
Exactly.
There are many reasons to have a Facebook profile name that's not exactly who you are in real life.
We cannot emphasize this enough. There are more reasons than the one that is always being cited. You just don't want, you're kind of hiding something. It's baloney. There are many, many reasons why you want to remain, anonymous or have an association with a stage name.
When people like this, for whom this is a really big, serious matter, step into the limelight and fight this, we can sort of, piggyback ride with them along, and hopefully what they do will actually achieve something that will help us. When they step forward and say, listen, we want this, the media is going to pay attention. It's more interesting to them. It's visually more interesting as well than a bunch of avatars. So when she said, listen, I'm going to fight for this, and we are going to Facebook headquarters and march in front of it, which would be fantastic to see.
That would be fantastic, yeah.
Yeah, so you don't want to mess with drag queens. So this pretty much made the news. It got on CNN, ABC, and all that sort of thing. And immediately Facebook said, "Okay, let's go and meet," which is sort of they have to deal with this because it gets a lot of publicity. Us avatars, sad people with no lives who spend it all in Second Life. Nobody's going to listen to us, not really.
Yeah, keep an eye on it and spread the word, because this to me is really discrimination. And without having to go further into it, I would also point people to an article from the Bay Area Reporter. We're going to link to it. It's an online publication that serves the LGBT community. And I'm reading here that Facebook has already responded with these typical sort of, corporate lines. They're trying to have more accountability, and they're striving for a safer, more open environment and accountability with their legal name, with their real name policy. If you have been stalked, if you are under threat from a former abusive relationship, if you're an activist in a country, that is trying to
kill you,
if you're a journalist even who is working under some circumstances, or somebody who is supplying information to journalists, you are shut out by this ridiculous policy that serves only one purpose, which is to collect consumer data that they can sell.
And then the stupid thing is that there are millions of people who use a fake Facebook profile that they will never find out because no one's ever going to report them because they are very normal, boring accounts that don't stand out much. It is the people like the drag queens who are some of these are actually quite famous, and I can, my Australian nephew is one actually, and she's got a profile and is quite famous as well, and they are open about it. They are not pretending that they're someone else. Their Facebook profiles are quite clearly not who they really are. Especially some of these drag queens have the most amazing names that are quite obviously not their real names because they're way too cool. So these are the people that get punished, not the weirdos and the people hiding in the shadows with the names that are, that may sound more real, but they're, the stalkers who get a realistic Facebook profile. And the stupid thing is that Facebook could quite easily fix this by, giving. They tell us that if you want to use a fake, an artist name or fake stage name.
Let's call it stage name or artist name or chosen name. We got to get away from the terminology that they're using, which, these names are not fake.
I'm fake in real life. But, the thing is, it could quite easily be fixed because Facebook says we want you to create a page for your stage name, which is fine.
The page doesn't really solve all these problems because I still have to administer the page with a name. So they're forcing me again to kind of, now we have a page to kind of live out your fantasy life, but we want the real person to administer the page. That's not solving the problem. We're still playing sort of their game that where they're writing the rules. Of course, then people say, well, why are you using the service then? That's the other answer that's usually given.
I think most people who use Facebook as an avatar would be really happy if we didn't have to, and it would be fantastic if Linden Lab would develop and improve the Second Life website, where we already sort of have profile pages.
That is certainly an important thing. But now we're talking again just about our little community. The bigger problem of these big companies kind of forcing us into their very narrow definition of what identity is, that I find really, really problematic, especially in the context of Facebook having such a sort of advantage in the race to build and maintain and run the future metaverse. And if they force us again then in an entire gigantic virtual world to play by their rules, I find it problematic. I mean, again, I come from a political tradition of sort of social democracy in Germany. People know that. I'm not hiding this. And I just think there has to be some sort of regulation, maybe device that governs these huge multinational companies that are almost like, international utilities, if you will. I mean, I can live without Facebook, but Facebook has enormous market dominance, just like Google.
To me, it's mostly about functionality. I know you're all idealistic about it.
I know. I want to change the world. You just want to use the world.
Yep, exactly. But the thing is, I use Facebook because it's very easy. I use it for my 1920s Berlin community. And some people say that, if Second Life makes a Facebook clone, it's not going to work because people use Facebook because they're already using it a lot for other things. But I've got, I use Facebook and I've got 3 or 4 different accounts for 3 or 4 different things. And one of them is Second Life, and I log on to a different browser. I have one browser just for Second Life stuff. And I don't combine that with my real life Facebook account at all. So these are 2 completely different things already. So, to me, it doesn't matter if I have to log on to the Second Life website or the Facebook website. I just want my community to have a place on the internet outside of Second Life itself, where we can chat, where we can share pictures of events, and probably most important of all, I can put a event on the calendar and invite all the members, because we have daily events in 1920s Berlin.
Good ideas when it comes to our little community, but this is, again, I mean, we acknowledged at the top of this segment that this is bigger because it affects people who have arguably harder lives than both of us, in the sense what they're being sort of discriminated against. And I just wanted to say that there is a hashtag for Twitter. It's hashtag #MyNameIs, where you can participate in that conversation, and we'll keep you updated with the response of Facebook. Also, my favorite radio program, To The Point, which originates in LA at KCRW, recently had a show on transgender teens who get thrown out of the home. It was a show about the epidemic of homeless LGBT youth who get thrown out of their home because of the parents completely flipping. And oftentimes there's a very conservative religious background why they didn't throw them out. And it's really heart-wrenching. And it's a real problem. There are thousands of teens homeless because their own parents, disavow, disown them, and because of them coming out. So I think this is related. How do these youth, when they're then trying to get on Facebook or something or communicate with people, and these are people who might not want to use their real name.
Of course, our problem is a luxury problem, and we shouldn't really...
First world problem. Second world problem.
It does make us feel a little bit silly when we're complaining, when you hear these stories of people with real issues. But, maybe it sounds a bit stupid, but, if this helps other people and also helps us, that's good for us.
Let's move on to all this new VR gear, and then we got to go to the feature, because you bombarded me with links of new VR gear. It's insane. And we have all, we have all the Kickstarter videos on the blog. You got to watch that stuff. We got the Perception VR suit. It's motion capture. It's interaction in VR worlds. But the motion capture aspect is pretty cool also. It promises to be small, light, and wireless, and between $200 and $500.
Yeah, you strap on a few sensors. You put them on your body, and these get scanned and translated into virtual reality. It is quite basic, really. This, for instance, could be used by people in Second Life for motion capture to make your own animations, which up until recently had to be done with quite expensive equipment.
And I remember I did a piece on Abramelin Wolf, who told me the first mocap suit he bought was $30,000, and the second system was $15,000, and now I think he has a system for slightly under 10 or something. And it's incredibly how fast that drops in that arena.
Absolutely, and I've said it before, and I will say it again, that I still think that the way forward is a way where we don't have to wear any sort of special gadgets.
You have another link, which we don't have to get into it, but it's apparently possible to glue an iPad to your face, which I always wanted to do. It's just what you dream of. You wake up and you go like, hey, I just had a dream. I want to put an iPad to my face.
I see people walking down the street every day with an iPhone glued to their ear, and to me that looks just as stupid. You weird people with your mobile devices.
Absolutely. Humanity is in decline as we speak.
Digital zombies, that's what you are.
Digital zombies, exactly. Okay. And we're not cheerleaders of this digital zombie tomb, are we not?
I don't have a mobile phone. I don't have an iPad. I hate mobile devices. I'm digital, I can live with.
We have a Canadian company, VR Vana, so I guess it's a play on Nirvana, and they make the totem, which is very interesting. I saw that a while ago, and the totem has an augmented reality component in it because it has cameras that are outward facing, so you can switch. And so this might be the device that people have been waiting for, where it's more integrating VR and AR.
Yeah, it's a little bit like the Leap Motion thing we talked about the other time, where they sort of combine reality with virtuality. And I think that we're going to get this with the Oculus Rift as well.
I'm also completely convinced that Oculus is going to shift a direction into the integration of AR and VR with the final product that's going to come out on the market. That seems to be the absolute trend. And one more VR piece of gear. It's Next VR, formerly Next 3D, and we have that from the Road to VR blog. These guys are making a rig for live broadcast, so you can film stereoscopic 360-degree video of let's say a sports event or a live show
or something interesting.
You're not a sports watcher, I gather.
I hate it so much.
Well,
Sorry.
that we have in common. Let
me explain a little bit how it works. It's quite simple. You've got a camera that films reality all around, and then puts it into VR. So you grab your Oculus Rift or your headset, put it on, and you are in a real-life location. At this moment, the camera is static, so you can't really walk around much, but you are in the middle of it.
Well, I just want to be at a foosball game and then, run naked through the field, if that's possible.
Well, and the great thing about virtual reality is that nobody else has to see it.
Exactly. It's a singular experience.
You go and do that.
Well, maybe I can share it on Facebook. But
I guess that means that people are right when they say that Second Life users are perverts.
This is also interesting because this is really geared towards live broadcast. And I read in the Road to VR, the other company, Jaunt, which is Jaunt, and I approached them if they would grant me an interview. And they got back and they said, in a little while when they're not so busy. So that's going to be very interesting because Jaunt is doing something very similar, also stereoscopic 3D, real life, and then kind of put that into a VR experience, but they're not doing this in real time.
It is like television, where television was in the 50s and 60s. You can film something, drama, and record it and experience it later, or you can film it live. And I would not be surprised that if in a couple of years we're going to film everything in virtuality.
Moving on, I wanted to briefly mention that High Fidelity, Philip Rosedale's new virtual world adventure, they have a blog post where they reveal a little bit what's been going on in the alpha phase with the alpha users and High Fidelity. We're both part of the alpha user team. And in a few weeks, time permitting, I will do a special show from the High Fidelity headquarters in San Francisco. And an avatar, I hear, is being created that will look like Draxter Dupre, but he will be in High Fidelity. So I'm excited about that. Stay tuned to this very program. Now, moving on to our feature interview, Tammy Fletcher, also known as Avalon Burke in Second Life. She's a licensed family and marriage therapist out of San Diego. We're going to link to her webpage, of course. She came into Second Life in 2006 and started to run Wellness Island, where she had therapy sessions and information all around mental health. It's a great conversation about virtual therapy sessions. Also, furries play a role in that interview, of course, furries, but not in the way you think. So without any further ado, here's Dr. Fletcher on therapy in real life and Second Life. She's recounting how she first got started in SL.
I kind of stumbled around, and you begin to meet people, and as you get to know them, conversations come up about what you do and sort of where you live, and I made some friends and told them what I did for a living. And the idea of mental health resources and information and education in Second Life was very interesting to a lot of people. And I thought, this could be really fun and maybe helpful to someone.
How did the practice look like?
It was very much like my real life practice. The way the appointments were set up, how you made an appointment. I took confidentiality and privacy very seriously, which isn't so easy always on the internet. That was one of the reasons behind buying an island, because I knew at the time that I could control to some degree, some of the confidentiality. So we would have an office 5,000 meters in the sky, surrounded with a security bubble. No, I ended up with more people than I could manage. And I was working on my PhD, I was working in real life. The big difference was I think I only charged maybe 1,000 Linden or so. It's $5 to see a licensed therapist. You can't beat that deal. But I loved it. I loved doing it.
That should have been this promotional video. You can't beat that deal.
I felt like there was such a need that it was definitely worth exploring. I got so much out of it. I met such great people and really learned a lot about what I would consider the needs of mental health services and resources in a virtual environment.
When you mentioned peer training, what does that mean? What kind of training did you do with individuals in Second Life?
We actually started just based on need. People that would come to see me at workshops, to work with my colleagues in Second Life. And there are physicians, as you know, there are physicians, there are psychologists, there are social workers who are legitimate. There are lots that are not. That's just straight up criminal behavior. And I would take it as far, maybe I take my job too seriously, but if someone goes into Second Life and says they're a physician, or says they're a therapist and they're not, to me, that's bordering on criminal as well. We have a responsibility. We have, we hopefully just by our training and our licensure that we can open the door to a certain amount of trust. And the more people that lie about it, I think we all take a hit for that. Oh, Second Life, those people are just a bunch of fakers. And they genuinely are not. But what we noticed was a need for people. As you know, there are people that live in Second Life. It has become almost their first life. And there can be some reasons for that where the person is too ill to go out, whether physically or mentally, emotionally ill. And Second Life is their lifeline. It becomes their life. They would be online 24/7. And I had some people who wanted to work with them as peers who I thought were pretty responsible. They did not have professional training. So we started a group called Guiding Lights. We had a curriculum. We had regular meetings, regular trainings. I developed a whole set of materials for them to keep with them when I wasn't online. I didn't want to be on call 24 hours a day. I've got someone here who's suicidal. Here are some things that you can give that person. It doesn't have to go through me. We don't deal with that. We send them. We try to help them find real life help for something that's that serious.
But if I understand you correctly, then you almost built up a system. You built up a system where people were able to get help 24/7 without you being there.
It did end up that way. Maybe 25 volunteers who were happy to do it. And so there was pretty much always someone. And then I also, throughout Second Life, set up kiosks for which someone could come, and it was like a first aid, mental health first aid, 911, or whatever it is in your country, global list of emergency contacts. And those, I still get emails. Those are still around Second Life. That was what I wanted, was a safety net upon a safety net upon a safety net. If someone needed help, that they could at least get a phone number or someone that could talk to them.
Going back to approaching Second Life or taking what Second Life offers and making it useful in a therapeutic setting. If you can give me some examples, obviously there's the confidentiality issue, but just sort of a ballpark, what people came to you with, what types of issues they came to you with when you practiced in SL back then.
I think above all, they came to me with Second Life specific issues.
I was just gonna guess that the drama and the kind of relationships and this kind of stuff,
where they would have a partner and they would be serious and they would maybe be partnered or married in Second Life, and then they find out that that person is not the gender they thought they were, or the person has a real life spouse and maybe nothing is ever going to come of this. How do they deal with it? The person has an alt who has been posing as a friend. Now, those are things that I think if you took to the average real-life psychotherapist, they might see right away, wait, you said Second Life? Okay, there's your first symptom. Where I didn't see Second Life as a symptom. I saw it and still see it as an amazing environment where there are real people and real feelings and real things happening. So we got that out of the way right away and tried to deal with the basic issues, which are the same, of trust, communication, boundaries. That's one of the things that I miss the most about Second Life, is that type of discourse with my colleagues about the validity of that environment. Yes, it's very different, but it's not a game. I'm the card-carrying, flag-waving. No, this is not a game. You can certainly play chess within it if you'd like to, but Second Life itself is a virtual environment. So Second Life is not a pathology. That's not to say that people didn't use it in a pathological way. Big difference. But Second Life in itself is an amazing thing. It's not a symptom, unless the person literally cannot log off and they go without food and they ignore their children. That's a separate issue, though. That's an issue within the person. Second Life is just the platform in which that's taking place. So a lot of relationship issues people came with. Sometimes what they were dealing with in real life, especially for people who were around the world and had no access to any. They wanted to see a counselor in real life, but they couldn't get to one.
I was just going to add, I mean, this can even happen in industrialized countries. It can happen in the U.S. You could be isolated geographically. You may have a disability.
Exactly. I was happy to be there and listen and try to do the same job as I would if they'd been sitting in person. I saw them. I connected with them. Were they always honest? In a rare instance, no. And sometimes they got more honest as they got to know me. But you know what? That happens in real life.
How do you know when somebody comes into your physical practice that everything that he digs up or you dig up from his past, that there's not some modification of what actually happened? People
carry a lot of shame about things, about who they are and the things they like, the things they don't like, the way they want to live. And in person, just as well as Second Life, it takes some time to gain trust and to help that person feel like they want to be honest with you, and that's okay.
What is your, since we're on that subject, what is your sense? Do you think is wishful thinking on my part? Because I always think that in Second Life it might be actually easier to be more honest actually than sitting there sort of face to face. And you're asking a sensitive question. What is your relationship with your parents? Or what was that thing with your first girlfriend? It might be a lot easier to reveal these things in Second Life under this avatar disguise, if you will.
I think so too. I absolutely agree. And to me, if it makes it easier for the person to open up and get to the heart of the matter, that's fine with me. Again, I don't see that as a pathology. If someone comes in and they're a furry, and I've talked about this before, again, not a pathology. It's how they're choosing to express themselves. Sometimes there are lots of really interesting clues to who they are by their persona that they choose to present, their avatar, however, like I use furry for an example, but there could be lots of different things. I just always found those things really interesting. I thought the person was, and it quite often opened the door to conversations about who they were. And I think that there had to be some sense of feeling safe behind a screen, behind an avatar, but also the other side of that is that sometimes that set them free. It gave them a pathway to show me who they were. And that's what it's all about.
So the avatar identity, was it an icebreaker for you when somebody came in and you said, wow, this is an interesting avatar. Tell me about how did you arrive at this avatar?
Always. And I saw lots and lots of people and the reason I use furries is because I saw so many people from the furry community. They always had fantastic stories. I mean, there was always mythology and history, and I used to be this, but I got more confident and now I'm this.
I mean, there's a cliche about furries that there's some real deviant stuff going on, and I don't believe it. I know a few furries in real life, and this is on my radar to do a story about them. But there is a cliche stuck to furries somehow.
Yes, that it's all about sex. I did not a thesis, but a presentation on furries in grad school. And my professor in real life thought it was going to be all about sex. And it was a human sexuality class. And what the bottom line is when there is sexual contact in the furry environment, it's typically very literate, very articulate, very romantic, very beautiful. I don't know if you've been to furry clubs in Second Life. I was invited a couple times. I was not ever a furry. I think they're beautiful, but I pretty much always look like just me in Second Life, except better shoes. But I got invited to a furry, and this is supposed to be the hardcore furry club. One of my clients invited me. He knows who he is if he's hearing this. I love this guy. And we waltzed. That's what we did. He waltzed with me. There was nothing, bizarre or scary going on. They were fantastic, and you could have a conversation about anything with anybody there. You're right. There is a misunderstanding, not just about furries, about any subculture.
I mean, a subculture is easy to make fun of, I suppose. I mean, for people outside, interestingly enough, for the gamer community, Second Life is that entire subculture which they love to make fun of. And I have my theories about that too. I mean, maybe you agree with me that I think some gamers, it's almost like, I smoke 2 packs of cigarettes. I don't. Just using it as a hypothetical. And then there's this guy who smokes 4 packs, and I gotta look at this guy. This guy's crazier. So basically what I'm saying, here I am, a gamer. I'm playing Call of Duty 8 hours a day. I have this cognitive dissonance that there's something maybe wrong with it. But look over here, there's people who dress up as furries and they live a Second Life. They're crazier than I am.
Yeah, we don't understand, and so we make fun of it, we get scared of it, and it's all, we all see the world through a different framework, and to me, it's all good. As long as you're not hurting anyone and you're not hurting yourself, I just don't get that mindset. But have I been on the receiving end of it regarding Second Life? Still, to this day. And I will go to the mat with colleagues or friends who have something to say about Second Life, because I think it's a fantastic platform.
Another subculture, and that's how we met. I did this story about adoption, and I just recently did something with a child play community, which came out great. When we talked about this adoption thing, I mean, what is your take on it? That culture of people adopting children and having some of these people have amazing, elaborate fictional families with like mothers and grandparents and everything.
It's a parallel to the furry discussion we just had. Playing a child, having a family in Second Life does not equate to child pornography, sex with children, using children in any way, shape, or form in an inappropriate way. Now, I'm a mother. I would be horrified. I would be reporting to the authorities. I would be livid if I saw something like that. But I had people who were members of Second Life families come to me. You've been in shops, you've been around Second Life when people bring their children, their child avatars, and they run around like kids do. That's probably the worst thing I can say about it, is just like real life families. I wonder if sometimes, and I've asked people, if they're portraying an 8-year-old child, they may be working through some issues that they had when they were 8 years old in real life. Maybe they weren't parented well. Maybe they weren't given the affection that they are now receiving and maybe healing from old damage in Second Life. So no, the adoption thing, sometimes, there are people that partner, that marry, and that's how they start a family. Maybe in real life, that's not going to be an option for them. But it's still a feeling of family. If your definition of family is very narrow, it has to look just like your family, then you're going to be offended. But if you can see that family is within the people that are defining it, it's that feeling of love, of support, of camaraderie, of connection and attachment, I would be hard-pressed to have a problem with that. And in fact, I think sometimes, again, people can be working through old issues. Lots of people were not parented very well in real life. And if they get a second chance to act it through and nobody's getting hurt by it, God bless them.
It literally becomes a Second Life. And this really has to do with us judging others more so than anything else, that we're really kind of judging, look at them, why are they doing this? I mean, I had literally people tell me, oh, I'm not interested in Second Life because I have a family and I live in a large city with museums. I mean, why would I kind of waste my time in there? Because I brought up the fact that there's a lot of artistic endeavors and might be interesting to check out. And then, so I felt that was offensive to me to dismiss it on the grounds of, I'm so cultured and I live in a major metropolitan area.
You know where I live. I live in a big city. I've got museums. and there are things in Second Life that take my breath away. A world of beauty or pain or just gorgeousness that someone has put their blood, sweat, and tears into. And I go to museums too.
Was there a situation in your practice in Second Life where you were really worried and then recommended or went a step further to intervene somehow? I mean, I'm thinking of a situation where somebody maybe was suicidal or something and you didn't know where that was, and you were kind of, what am I going to do now? I don't know where he or she is.
That's happened more than once, unfortunately. And whether or not it was a legitimate suicide threat or a threat of self-harm, I legally have to act on it to the best of my ability. And this was one of the drawbacks, one of the only drawbacks for me with working with people strictly online, is that they weren't always honest about how to contact them, or they would disappear. They're poof, they're gone. So I have had a number of conversations with Linden Labs, and I feel for them. They didn't get into this to be in the business of social services. So it affected my intake of clients in Second Life. It affected my screening of clients in Second Life, and limited to some degree. But then again, if someone is dealing with that level of symptomology where they want to kill themselves or they want to hurt themselves or they want to hurt someone else, they need a real life physician or emergency room. I can help a little bit. I can get them there. I can give them resources. And sometimes it wasn't true, but I have to respond to it as if it were each time. I have to take every single person seriously that says, I am going to hurt myself. I'm going to log off right now. Boom, I'm done. That's an emergency for me, for sure. And this is what bringing me back to those who go in world and state that they are qualified physicians or nurses or social workers or therapists or counselors. Going in and claiming those credentials, people will tell you things about their own risk factors. And if you don't know how to deal with that, and if you don't have some ethical boundaries and guidelines to follow, someone could get hurt. So that ultimately it's for the client's protection that we're honest about. I have an interest in psychology versus I've got multiple degrees and a license.
Maybe there should be a mechanism where Linden Lab should not allow people to advertise services if they're not somehow screened, somehow
verified. We even had a group with people in it, and it might even still be intact. I don't know if it's active. Of a physician, me, social workers, people that were legitimately, and we verified each other. It's not hard to verify someone. If you know my name, you can go look me up and see that I have a license number, and it's not hard. But it was just us. We're not Linden Lab. I feel for them because that's a big endeavor. But yeah, I think we're just freedom of individual expression. And when you're claiming to be a doctor, a medical doctor, and you're not. And the people that are the most upset about this are the actual medical doctors who are in Second Life. They don't like this one bit because they see the liability.
Now, let's go to this, my favorite subject matter. How do you explain, or how do you spar in real life with people who dismiss Second Life, specifically now for maybe in your field, although you don't practice in the world anymore, but do you have conversations with colleagues where they go, like we said earlier, oh my God, all this stuff is just one big addiction thing that needs to be eradicated? And then how do you respond? And first of all, does that happen often? And how does that come up?
I don't talk to a lot of colleagues about it. It just doesn't come up. In running a private practice, I'm not around other colleagues that much, if that makes sense. I have my own office. I'm in a suite of other offices with therapists who have their own offices. Usually I see closed doors and they see my door closed, and so we don't talk a lot. When I go to a training, particularly if we're talking about things like gaming addiction, which is a hot topic, I have no problem with kind of giving my little elevator speech about Second Life. Second Life is not a game. Second Life is a virtual environment. It's user created. It's incredible. Check it out before you develop an opinion about it. I have gotten my laptop out. I have Second Life installed on my work laptop and tried to show people that, to me, is key. It's very easy to make a judgment about something that you haven't seen. So I'll have some bookmarks of places where I will take them to say, and they're, immediately they're into it. They want to see, they want to go more places that are beautiful, botanical gardens and, whatnot. Some of the art installations. Once someone actually sees what Second Life is and what it looks like, usually you've got them. Usually they realize that all of the mystery and misunderstandings about it sort of melt away when they see what it actually is.
Yeah, but still, I would imagine, this happens to me all the time. Always the question comes up with reality. It's always framed in this, here's reality and here's is escapism, essentially. That's how it's sort of framed all the time.
But so is TV from that framework.
No, you don't have to tell me, tell them.
Food, anything can be escapism, and escapism isn't in itself a bad thing. If you meditate, isn't that a form of, it's all in how we perceive it. It's all in kind of the glasses that we filter through meaning in what we see in our world. And it boils down to what is reality. Second Life is a reality. It absolutely is a reality. It's not an imaginary world, imaginary people. My way of, dealing with that the best, and I would say my friends and family have been more reluctant and reticent than my coworkers, but maybe because, I never hide that I'll go into Second Life or I'll say something about Second Life. They all know. But again, once they see it, once they go and dance, once they go and surf, or any of the number of just silly things that make up this very innocent form, perhaps, of escapism.
What reservations does your family then have?
They're not very interested in Second Life. I think they have avatars. They all have avatars, friends and family. They've checked it out, but it's not something that they would ever choose to do. I think one of my dearest friends in real life her name is in my partner box, and she lives 2 miles from me, and we met through Second Life. She ended up living 2 miles from home, and we don't hang out in Second Life. We meet here in my house for coffee every week.
So was that a coincidence? She already lived there, and then you go, hey, wait a minute, I live over here.
Total coincidence.
That's
yeah.
hilarious.
We found out we lived in the same city, and it turned out we live in the same zip code and the same, so that's been, so she gets it. And kindly lets me squat on her land. So I have a place to live there.
Every time I talk to an old bee, in terms of Second Life, they always say, still Second Life does that, and I'm still, as if Second Life is over. I know you didn't say that, but that's, of course, that kind of sort of meme that Second Life is dead or it's dying. That happened. I remember that even started, Voice is coming, Second Life is dead. Now Linden Lab is building a new world. Second Life 2.0 will also maybe remain a niche. I suppose it's only a problem if the company that runs it goes bankrupt, because then we don't have a world. But my question to you is, in the future, in the new Second Life, what would you like to see changed? If you have 5 things that they could improve upon, which kind of bug you now? The rent is too high.
The rent is too high. There's no question. Where it keeps people from, it keeps not just me, it keeps people who want to add value to the environment. It makes it prohibitive. And it seemed like, and this is me being a bit out of touch, I'm sure, rather than Linden Lab, but it seems to, in my experience, that when Pathfinder Linden left, that things changed. At least for me. He personally took me under his wing and said, here, this is how you get some land. This is how you can, this is how you qualify to get this island. And so, yeah, it was too high for me to throw money. Keep paying out and not making any money. I just wanted to break even, and I never came close. I think it keeps out people that want to, bridging to real life with education, social services, that kind of thing.
We covered the double-edged sword that is avatar therapy, if you will. The plus side is the anonymity, and that's exactly then at the same time the flip side, as you pointed out. How will you go about when in the new Second Life you will be able to afford an entire continent? What would you do if you start this whole thing again in SL 2.0, the wellness island, 2.0?
I think I would do things exactly the same. I would recreate what I had prior with new, obviously new materials. And I think I would expand the idea of groups so that it wasn't all my project. I was beginning to do that, but I would like to see things like groups for addiction, for example, maybe a 12-step type of a group where someone who has experience in that field could lead it. I'd like to do it again, bring it up to date, create more networking with some schools to see if perhaps we could start offering continuing education units and intern hours and more training. And so we keep at it, you know, whether I'm working in Second Life or just going in to visit the hair fair. I'm still an advocate for Second Life, and I'm still an advocate for social services in a virtual environment, always. Linden Lab has given us so much. It's done so much for my life personally. One of my dearest friends in real life I met from Second Life. I've seen relationships work out and people get married and start families in real life. It's a different way of meeting people. It's 2014. It's not scary. It's not that foreign. And there's a whole lot that people might be missing out on. I think there's something for everyone.
So that was Tammy Fletcher, a.k.a. Avalon Burke in SL, giving a nice shout-out to the worker bees at the lab who keep the lights on. Listeners, let us know what you think of VR therapy by calling in or commenting. Also, let us know what else is out there in SL at the moment in terms of mental health care.
Yeah, that'd be really interesting to know if there are other groups in world that deal with this. I also know about the PTSD, the post-traumatic stress disorder group, and because I have a few friends in real life who suffer for this, and it's when I tell them that this is happening in Second Life, it's one of those things that makes people interested in Second Life in a way that they didn't expect to be.
Right, exactly, and I think this is a powerful thing. Again, and with the future of VR and more immersion. And here we're talking again also about how anonymity in this context is actually can be very, very positive. And it brings me back to what we talked about earlier. Again, if the Facebook model sort of wins the whole real name obsession, it might really shut out people who just don't thrive in those environments at all.
One of the most important things about Second Life is that you can feel safe, and not just to outlive your weird fantasies, but also for really important things like being able to talk about what's bothering you and what's making your real life very complicated and difficult. And that's what makes Second Life unique.
We're at the end of the show. Joe, any recommendations what to do over the weekend with our lives that we have nothing else to do but to hang out in SL?
I'm going to Innsmouth. I'm not quite sure if you pronounced it quite right, because I've heard a bit of a shocking news. I think a lot of people will know that sim. It's been around for a long, long time. It's sort of a H.P. Lovecraft-themed sim. And it turns out that they're probably going to close unless someone wants to buy it. They've got 3 weeks left, and then it may be gone forever. So I'm going to have one last good look around, and if anyone likes this sim as much as I do and wants to keep it, please have a look and perhaps consider buying it.
I would recommend the Home and Garden Expo, Sales Benefit Relay for Life. Really amazing stuff. Super awesome latest mesh stuff at the Home and Garden Expo. Also, before we go, I wanted to say that 7 years ago today, I published my Virtual Guantanamo reportage on YouTube, and Virtual Gitmo was built by Noni de la Peña and Peggy Weil. Noni's in the news a lot these days. There's a new blog post on the creatorsproject.com about her VR journalism. She started in Second Life. The Virtual Guantanamo story changed my life in the sense that it opened up a lot of doors for me as an advocate for these spaces in sort of a citizen journalist context. We also, of course, have a very long interview with Noni de la Peña in episode 24, which aired during this off-season. So check that out if you haven't. That's all we have time for. Have a great weekend, Joe.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.
Auf Wiedersehen.
The Drax Files Radio Hour with Joe Yardley is a weekly production of Basic Drax Entertainment. The show is supported by Leap Motion, SL Go By On Live, Stitcher, Paradise Lost in Second Life, Bot Girls Identity Circus, Carvel Design, Vika Creations, Humanoid Animations, Escapades, Botanical, Death Row Designs, Angel Red Couture, Fallen Gods Incorporated, Blue Moon Enterprises, What's Next, Avacon, and Landscapes Unlimited. Contact the show via Skype, Drax Files, Avatar Drax Files, or email radio@draxfiles.com.